It's a very busy day on the business desk. Stephen Carroll is here, starting with the news of an enormous deal, very big deal in the telecoms industry, Stephen.
Yeah, that's right. We've had confirmation from Nokia that it's buying its Franco-American rival Alcatel Lucent in a deal that's worth €15.6 billion. The new group will be called Nokia Corporation. It'll be headquartered in Finland, but with what's being described as a strong presence in France. Nokia shareholders will hold 66.5% of the new company, Alcatel Lucent taking the rest. Both firms focus on telecoms network infrastructure. A merger will give them around a quarter of the global market. That's to help them compete with the likes of Ericsson and China's Huawei. Now, the French government gave its backing to the deal yesterday after the heads of both companies met with President Hollande. Economy Minister Emmanuel Macron said it would be a good step for Alcatel and said that they'd been promised that there'd be no job cuts in France. The Paris-headquartered Alcatel-Lucent has been undergoing a massive cost-cutting programme in an effort to return to profitability. The companies say they expect to save €900 million thanks to the deal, but it's not clear yet where exactly those savings will come from.
Google, we're going to talk about them now. They're under the spotlight in the EU again, aren't they?
That's right. The internet giant is set to be accused of abusing its dominant position in the internet search market. A statement of objections, the opening salvo in a competition law probe, will be issued by the EU's competition commissioner, Margrethe Vestager, later. An internal memo confirms that Google was expecting the charges. It says they believe they have a very strong case with especially good arguments when it comes to services for consumers. The EU's 5-year investigation into Google was nearly resolved without charges last year, but that deal fell apart at the last minute. A separate probe is also expected to be announced into Google's Android operating system.
Let's talk China now. There have been some disappointing figures on the economy there, haven't there?
That's right. Economic growth hit a 6-year low in the first quarter of this year. The world's second largest economy grew by just 7% between January and March. The figures particularly hurt by a slowdown in the construction and manufacturing sectors there. Let's see now how the markets have reacted to that news and trading. We'd seen the Shanghai Composite trade down after that news was announced, down around 1% in trading today. As you can see, it's come back slightly since that, down around 0.5% now. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong not seeing much reaction to it. Meanwhile, in South Korea, the Kospi and Seoul trading up thanks to some news in the electronics industry there. Well, to talk more about China and some other stories, we're joined in studio by Naeem Aslam, who's the Chief Market Analyst at Avatrade. Naeem, thanks for coming in to see us.
Thank you for having me.
What's your take on China? Should we be disappointed or relieved with this figure of 7% growth?
I think it's a bit of a mixed feeling. If you look at the 7%, was I disappointed when I saw that reading this morning? No, not really. Because you were expecting that. If you look at the import and export figures, which were released earlier, they were pretty much reflecting what the GDP figure was going to be. But what's keeping me awake at night is not really the GDP figure itself. It's the Chinese junk bonds and the level where they are right now. The amount of these junk bonds that the investors are holding, they are at the same level what they were back in 2004. Now, you may want to ask me that, okay, then why is there really a concern, the junk bond? The junk bonds basically have an enormous amount of debt for the companies which cannot pay. Moody has already said that the default ratios has already gone above 5.1%, which is well above than any other country within Asia. So I think the next episode of a financial crisis could very well initiate within the bond market, and that arena could be in China.
Interesting one to watch.
Worrying stuff, yeah. I mean, the trend from lower growth in the past has meant that the Chinese government tends to put as much stimulus into this as they possibly can. I mean, is that perhaps good news for the rest of the world if they were to go ahead and try and do that again?
I would certainly agree, and I think that is the silver lining within that. And as we were looking at the markets, that the only reason the markets are coming back because traders and investors are perhaps pricing this thing. They're thinking that People Bank of China would put more money in the market, and hence it's a good news. Even though it's a bad addiction for the market, we may end up in a very bad place.
Let's look ahead to what's happening later today. We've got the meeting of the European Central Bank. You're our voice on this every month for us, Naeem. We're well into the bond buying quantitative easing programme now. Is Mario Draghi just going to tell us how wonderful it is and what a great effect it's having?
I think 4 pillars going to be very prominent today. And what are they? He's going to be cautiously optimistic. He's going to emphasize QE. Number 3, he's going to go back and he's going to say, okay, let's adjust the buy list. At the same time, the 4th pillar is going to be steer away from Greece because it's still in a mess. So let's talk about this in a bit more detail. What's cautiously optimistic really mean for the market? So when we say cautiously optimistic part is coming from the economic data. He got another badge from the IMF yesterday who upgraded the economy. And then caution is coming when we're drilling down into the data of every single country within Eurozone. We have a Germany on a one end, which is very, very robust and has a very brawny performance. Then France, unfortunately, is still occupying the bottom place within the Eurozone. So he, in the last speech, very interesting affair was that he said downward risk still persists. He used 5 times and he hasn't used the upward once. Second, he's going to emphasize the importance of the QE, why it is really important. He's going to convince German and Bundesbank to stay on board on this one. Number 3, we could possibly be listening and be hearing more about the buy list. Because you remember last time we were talking about that the ECB has initiated the quantitative easing, but there is a limit for minus 0.2%. Bond yields going to be very much concerned for Draghi today, and he could possibly be removing that list, or he could go and he could increase his shopping list. He could extend the number of countries where they will be doing that. Finally, it's Greece. Nearly over 7 billion worth of debt will be due that they have to pay by August. They are not giving up to the German wish list, or whatever they want them to do. So as long as they don't do that, I think ECB, the question today, the journalist would be grilling him on this thing, would be, okay, are you going to remove the waiver? Where Greece will have, where their sovereign debt would be accepted by the ECB? These would be the few elements which are going to have a very conspicuous importance around this affair.
And I feel that Greece is a story that's just not going away for the time being anyway.
Unfortunately.
Naeem Aslam from Avatrade, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
That's all the business news tonight.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you to Stephen. Thank you to Naeem as well. I hope you get a night's sleep tonight as well.
Thank you.